Very quickly, I was just going to mention the climate update, just so you kind of give a little foreshadowing of what will be coming. What we'll be doing starting in January is, you may recall that there were a variety of categories within the recommendations that the consultant gave, such as organizational design, technology, and so on. I'll be taking each of those categories and each month reporting on how we've addressed those particular recommendations. So that'll be one thing that will be shared. The other thing, just for internal purposes, so that folks know, is we'll be designing a matrix where across the top would be all of those recommendations, the 30-plus recommendations, and then down the side would be the various activities, tasks, initiatives that have been implemented to address those. And then, going across that matrix, then you can kind of X out, well, because one particular initiative may end up addressing several different recommendations. And what that will do is that will paint a picture for me to know, which things have we already addressed, which things do we still need to work. And sometimes having that visual makes it pop. You see where the white is versus where the blackout is. And you'll be able to be in a better position to make sure that we're addressing the recommendations as comprehensively as we can.
So you're going to introduce that in January?
In January, yes. Yep. And then finally, if I just mentioned the principal update, just so folks know, we did put advertisements back out for the position, and some applicants have already been coming in. Once again, Nancy Kniske will be heading up the screening process, and then names will be submitted to meet with finalists in the same approach that we used before. The search committee will be recalled, reactivated, and if there are empty slots, we'll be going out and seeking empty slots for that. So we're hoping some interviews to be started in January again. So it's been up already for about 10 days, maybe, something like that.
Applicants coming through.
Applicants are coming through, correct?
And the search committee is comprised of representatives from
Thank you. So it's representatives from parents, board, teachers, and administration. That's for the screening type committee that goes through that first round. Then when the finalists come through, open parent forum, open teacher forum, administrative and concentrated interviews with groups, school visit, student forum, all the stakeholders like we did last time.
Do we have parents that are still interested in being on the committee? Do we need to have enough reach out to parents?
I don't believe so.
Do you have an idea of the timeline?
We'll start interviews in January. We'll see how many applicants come in and try to have enough to have a pool again. But again, the reality is our pool is larger than you think, but we've already gone through that pool and that, so it may not be as large as it was before, but it doesn't mean that, we're not going to find the right candidate. Or it could be just as large, you don't know.
And January is in 2 weeks.
Right.
Was there any change to the job description or anything when it went out again, or when it went out just the same?
Any other questions? Was that your entire?
That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have public comment next, and there's 2 people signed up. Christina Jugelski. Did I get it right?
You did.
I'm glad.
I am too, because no one ever gets it right. That's why I'm referred to as Miss J. I don't know you that. Hi, my name is Miss Gielski, or Christina Gielski. The students refer to me as Miss J. I teach AP Bio here. And I actually have been trying to come to public comment. This is like my 3rd meeting I've tried to get to. But unfortunately, due to my second job schedule, I was really excited when you rescheduled this meeting because I could come. The reason why I wanted to speak is because I'm hoping to make, I guess, a public plea for Dr. DeMello to put her name in for the executive director search. I'm very impressed with the time I've spent under her. She's been a very good stabilizing force. I have worked under many different female head administrators, so principal or above. And Dr. DeVoe is the first person I've worked under where I've really looked up to her and really hoped that she'd stay on longer so that maybe be able to mentor me down the road or have the capability of working more with her. One of the coolest things that I'm very excited about this year is the fact that she really pushes us to get out of the classroom and go experience the world and then bring those experiences back to the classroom. And that's awesome. I'm extremely, I guess, excited, privileged, blessed to be able to go on the trip to Costa Rica in February. I'm hoping to take my experiences and bring them all of the ecology back into AP Bio and all of the biodiversity and all of that piece back in. But I'm hoping that it'll actually kickstart a new direction for me, either with outreach or continuing to push what I love about the sciences to my students and then beyond my students as well, and sort of teach them a little bit of stewardship. So beyond just me, though, I'm hoping that you will put your name in. I'm trying not to look at you too much because then I get really emotional about it. But Dr. DeMello has really done a very good job at allowing the science department to sort of breathe this year. She took the pressure off the AP teachers a little bit by telling us it's about getting the curriculum to the students. It's not about the test scores. And that was fantastic because it meant I could really delve into the subject I needed to delve into at the depth that I wanted to without feeling the need to, okay, we gotta go because the test is in May. And it was nice. It's nice to breathe. It's nice to be able to take the time to work with all of my students. I have the very lucky ability this year to have a very diverse classroom of students who sat. Anyone was welcome and everybody came, and that's awesome. So I am teaching a truly heterogeneous group. So it was really wonderful to have that pressure of, oh my God, your scores have to be great. You have to have that like 4.0. So that's my plea. That's my public comment. And thank you. Thank you for everything you've done so far. So.
The next comment is from Margaret.
Well, my name is Marnie Hooker, and I'm a parent of a ninth grader here at Amsacs. And one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention, most of you probably already know, but I haven't heard any comments about it and the impact that it might have on Amsacs, is kind of what's happening across the street. And you've heard this in the Main Street Journal, comes out, but there is a huge development going in across the street with GE Life Sciences going in, a hotel going in, other businesses coming in, a huge amount of apartments coming in. Just from a logistical perspective, are we starting to think about how is that going to affect just the traffic and the poor guy standing there in the middle of the street first thing in the morning, and we go from having just, I'll say, a few cars that we have now to having over 1,000 cars as the other businesses ramp up, and just making sure that we start to think about what those logistics are. Also, there's the opportunities that this is going to provide for the businesses that are coming in, just the close proximity, the partnerships we can build up, and just making sure we're trying to be proactive in taking on those opportunities, as well as making sure that we're addressing whatever concerns, safety for the students, and also looking forward as we're looking at the wildlife in the area. I'm sure their sampling is going to change over time as buildings go in and that moves around. So as you do your wildlife sampling over the course of the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, what's happening here? That could be really neat data to report back to Massachusetts Conservation, saying what the buildup has done. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, make sure that we are proactive thinking about it.
Does the article share the timing of when the development might begin?
It's happening, it's going in.
Yep.
It's,
House is up there now.
the houses are being built right now.
Plus diagnostics is already
Quest Diagnostics is already there. The Avalon Apartments are 3/4, 4/4 built already. GE Life Sciences is moving in June or July. They officially signed the lease last week. There's a hotel going in, Hilton Garden Inn, is directly, again, also right across the street. So you see this, it's you guys all to see, but here's Amsa down here in the corner.
Yep. You made the
And
page.
this is what's happening all around us. And so I know it, sort of the last meeting we had on the focus, we looked at the 5-year plan, perfect topic for the 5-year plan.
Is there a link to that article that maybe we could write on MSJ News?
It's right on the Main Street Journal, right in the Main Street Journal. You're welcome to this copy also if you'd like it, but I haven't been on, I don't know about the Main Street Journal website, I don't go to that one.
It's MSJnews.com. I think this just came out.
This just came out this weekend.
Yeah, this past weekend as well.
So,
All right, thank you.
It was great to get you around for my discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just so some of the newer board members don't know, but we do have a facility task force of the board who has been monitoring this issue, so the board's well aware of it and has worked with the administration on what the planning is. It is very tied into the pending litigation, which is one of the reasons that we cannot be very public about any of it, and we will be discussing that in executive session today. Thank you.
Right, so that is all of public comment. Let's move to chair business. There's a number of items here. We have updates on formal complaints. We have a collective bargaining task force update, executive director recruiting task force update, and program management practices implementation task force. So let's start on formal complaints. I believe the board has 3 formal complaints open at this time. I will give an update on the one that I've been working on slowly. And then Roger, I'll ask you for the second. And then Chris, if you could give, there's 5 that we're treating as one in order to process efficiently. So there's a hostile workplace or work environment and bullying complaint lodged against the previous ED. We've had an initial couple conversations about that, and it is not yet done. It is at work. And we'll continue to report on it until it's resolved, and we can bring a formal report back to the board. Roger, I'll give you the second.
The second one is a complaint regarding dismissal.
Unfair termination.
Unfair termination that is still in the pending lawsuit category, so we are on hold pending the resolution of the lawful litigation.
And then, Chris, you
So-
I haven't given that one a title, so maybe you could refer to it as.
So as 5 individuals made complaints regarding remarks that were made by a board member at the October meeting. After we were given the complaints at the November 20th meeting, we enlarged the task force to include, it was originally assigned to Rick and myself. We brought Scott into the task force. We contacted each of the 5 complainants. We have had individual meetings with each of them. We have met as a group once since then. We now have to make another determination about how many additional conversations we need to have before issuing a finding and report back.
All right. Board, any questions on that? All right. So Allison, could you give us a collective bargaining task force update? And Sarah Allison's arrived.
Hi, Sarah. Sorry. Sorry I'm late, all. We had a collective bargaining session about December 2nd, and we've got another one scheduled for December 23rd. We've transitioned to new council. Things are moving on well. At the December 23rd, we will be providing our counter proposal to the proposal at hand, and we're going through that now and plan on having, I think, 2 more scheduled sessions in January, and then one we've already pre-scheduled for February.
And the new council is fully on board and participating in the session?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then our next update is the Executive Director Recruiting Task Force. And I will look to
I'll do the update.
Michael. Okay.
So, yes, I'm representing Scott, Ev, and Roger tonight as part of the task force. It was a productive week last week. Ran 6 focus groups, about an hour each. A lot of them went over, parents, teachers, and administrators. Some familiar faces here tonight. There's a lot of passion about the selection of the permanent ED and a lot of strong opinions out there, which is really great. Not all the views were unanimous in the focus groups. In fact, we had some good debate, which is good. You don't always have that. And I prompted some of the debate, if you saw folks shaking their heads and tried to pull that out. But certainly where folks were unanimous, where I was really around preserving the focus and attention on the academic excellence and the history of the school and our focus there. Talked at length about the uniqueness of being a charter school and the mission. And, you know, Melissa, when I was interviewing for the board, you talked a lot about creating productive citizens. And that came out well. And so there's just a lot of passion and enthusiasm. People care. There's a desire for permanence, right? There's an acknowledgement that we've had a lot of churn in the ED role. And so plenty of themes came out. I promised that the outcome of this week would be 3 deliverables. One would be an updated job description, an interview guide, and a rubric, a decision rubric to help us know, because all those items in the job description are not equal. And we were able to, my colleague and I were able to, I think, cull out what those priorities were. And so we have that. I want to say a few other things. One is I definitely want to acknowledge Sarah Snow. This was not an easy task to pull these together in such a short time. And Dr. DeMillo, I want you to know that across the board, people acknowledge just how hard you're working. You know, there's this understanding that you've been here for a couple months, you're in this interim role, you're doing 2 jobs, and your passion and commitment is just so appreciated, and that just came through. So I reported back to the task force throughout the week, and we do want to make a recommendation. The recommendation is to go forward with what our original plan had been, which is to go to executive search. I feel that the work of last week is going to advance that because we have an updated job description and the interview guide. We're seeking about $30,000 to $50,000 from the board to do this. And having talked to a number of executive search firms, I'm confident that price range will work. We're seeking permission from the board to choose this executive search firm so that we can go ahead and do that right away. And I will tell you that we have, while these focus groups were underway, that we did have the old job description out in School Spring. We were able to get a number of resumes. There are 5 or so very strong resumes that we really like. And so our recommendation would be to take those resumes and Dr. DeMillo's qualifications and move them forward to one of these search companies, who would then carry it out. So our proposal is not that we would be running something concurrently with the resumes that we were able to listen to. All those would go into a single funnel and managed by the executive search firm. In my conversations with the executive search firm, they're very clearly, we are in this time window, but there was not panic or anything expressed by those firms when I talked about what our needs were. They feel, every one of them felt that they've got very good pools of candidates. They're aware that we've got an interim who is here and interested in the role, and that we've been able to pull some resumes of our own. So there was not panic around the timing. They felt that they're ready to go, and the next step would be to get that permission to go ahead and sign up one of those firms.
So it's the committee's recommendation to hire an executive search firm?
That's correct. Yes,
So have you already spoken to some of these firms?
I have.
How many?
And,
I've spoken to 3. I've spoken to 2 of them, and I've been in email contact with a third.
are these the 3 that you would probably look at to
I
provide a
think so,
proposal?
yeah.
They specialize in education.
They do.
We're going to tag team questions for the next
They do. So Melissa, one of them was one I think that you recommended. They were involved in selecting the Marlboro superintendent, Lexington, and are in the area, and some other big ones as well. All we're familiar with them.
What about the timing? What was their timing?
Well, it's no surprise. At the last meeting, there was a discussion that we're in this window, right? That there's this November through March window, and that was their timing. They want to get started. but I had said this in the last meeting as well. You know, they are already working with a pool of candidates who are interested in these types of roles. And so you take this collection that's out there, they felt that it was doable to hit this one.
In the inclusion of our 5 resumes that feel qualified as Dr. Novella into their process, is that so that they can then run like the scheduling of interviews and how they screen and all this?
I think it's about, so I had that similar question. Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that all these consultants offer to do is to really manage this process end to end, which is highly desirable. Their feeling is for them to add the most value, they need to line up all the candidates. With this, you know, the job description and the decision rubric and the interview guide helps bring alignment, but if we are running a separate process from them at the end of the day to make a formal recommendation, and this is my professional recommendation as well, it's always to have one person managing all of that.
And would they plan on providing, you know, pick 2, pick 10, pick 20 candidates? Are they going to pre-screen pretty heavily based on what we think the requirements are?
Yeah, and I'll open this up to my colleagues as well. The folks that I talked to had this is a process where they go through, I think there may be some fatigue out here in terms of the amount of times that we're surveying and focus grouping our parents, teachers and administrators. They're interested, obviously, in getting started and talking to some people, but just once they confirm for them what it is that they're looking for, they did describe a fairly quick narrowing process, where they take the candidate pool that's out there, they narrow them down, and then we work with them to ultimately select.
So they'll be presenting us with
They would narrow it down.
to 1 or 2
You know, I think
or number.
it depends on, I think we can provide those requirements to them, but it felt to me that they would narrow it down to 2 or
5 or a few
Yeah,
percent.
So, is it the task force intention that you would select someone and then they would come and, I'm assuming that, you know, they could make a presentation to us of their whole process?
Yeah, so Scott, you just nodded your head.
No, I mean, they're giving us,
You already know the process.
no, it could be 1 or 2 things. They can either come to the board and show us their full process. They already gave us, it's kind of a written, at least one of the organizations kind of gave us a written process. They're more than welcome to come to a board, but I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if we do that in executive session.
No, public session.
I think
Public session.
I mean, our 2 choices are, part of it is a challenge of timing, in that
We wait a month.
if we were to go to a full board meeting, we would need to
Wait a month.
schedule it into January and have them present at that point. What we're asking for is for the task force to be able to screen the companies and delegate to the task force the ability to make the decision on the executive search firm to choose in the interest of time. And then I think in the January timeframe, I'm ad-libbing here, so as part of our inform, I think in the January timeframe, we would bring the selected search firm in, have them present to the board, answer questions, help improve the process. But I don't think that we can afford to wait until January before we were to start the process of deciding on which search firm to choose.
So what would they do between now and January?
It
It would be screening
was
candidates.
student candidates.
Based on what?
Based on the job description, right, and the rubric we put together, their own quick analysis, and then.
Maybe focus, all the focus
Yeah.
information.
Do you feel you had enough of the stakeholder population to create this?
I do. I would have liked to have more people, but you know, there were, even though everybody's not unanimous in the ideal solution, there was enough that I felt that by the time we were in the 5th or 6th focus group, that we were hearing a lot of the same themes. In fact, we were using that to get underneath it. So I feel pretty confident that we got.
So what I would say, from my own perspective, is that I would like to see the job description and rubric and what we're aiming towards before I would make any vote to move forward. I mean, as a board member, I think that, we need to understand what we're committing to. And,
Are you suggesting that you're not sure, because you haven't seen job description, rubric, and interview questions, that you don't think we should move forward with the executive search firm?
what I'm saying is a $30,000 to $50,000 commitment, which we're making right now, without any visibility to who we're committing to or to what we're committing to. I don't feel comfortable with that.
So I'm a bit confused here. So I'm trying to figure out whether we're talking about one thing or two things. So the rubric and the decision guide and the job description refer to the selection of the ED?
Yep.
Correct. Okay. So I'm hearing two separate conversations that are going on here, one of which Roger was talking about, which was the selection of the search firm, which is what you all are proposing. You're asking the board to
With the funds that allow them to
I
make the
understand. So
decision.
that's one decision. And then I'm hearing intermingled with that, a second decision, which is the narrowing down of the field of applicants and how that is going to be presented to the board. So I just would ask us to separate out those two here for a minute for the sake of clarity. Because you're asking the board to come up with $30,000 to $50,000 and give you all the permission to select the search firm, correct?
That's the
So that's one thing, okay? So I think we ought to treat that. And then if we want to sit here and talk about the actual selection process, then that's fine. But it's getting commingled, it's a bit confusing for me.
Well, I think there's probably a little commingling in that the selection process would necessarily change if we had a search firm running it and also screening to some extent. Right. And you get the sense that, I'm sure it's the process they use with every other charter school and regional school district around. Do you get the sense that all three of them, their process as you understand them, is going to fit Amsa? Or are we going to want it to be different because we're different or have different needs?
I do. I do. I feel like, what I want here, having been through last week, is to make sure that when we hire this permanent ED, that the scrutiny, they'll have good days and bad days. When this individual has a bad day, that the scrutiny of us coming back and saying we did not follow the process that we initially agreed to, which is to go out and quickly search the world, find the best possible person. That, to me, is the greatest gift that we can give this individual. And in my experience, $30,000 to $50,000, probably on the lower end of that. I think we can, any one of these three, can come in and share this population of people that are out there, in conjunction with our intern, and in conjunction with the 5 resumes that we were able to get, to be able to put on the table the best possible people for this role. And I think it's this is not their first rodeo, this is what they do. And very quickly in my phone conversations with the two of them, they knew of AMSA, they knew what we were trying to do, they understood, more than anything, but I think on behalf of the focus groups, what I wanted to hear is they understood the uniqueness of a charter school and the uniqueness of I wrote this language down, creating this, I added to this job description, creating a school climate of openness, active exploration, effective teaching and learning, that the beauty of a charter school is that privilege to be able to push the boundaries and teach differently and do that. And that's a unique person that they're trying to find. And, it could be that person in public schools who just are so in prison that they can't do things they want to do, that they want to become part of a charter, or a person who's had excellent background in charter school. And they express that to me. And so I think it's no surprise, Melissa, right? The things you're concerned about, I think, are valid. My feeling is that we can find that any one of these three will do. I think we got to get going now. I think.
But you
That's a great
acknowledge
point.
the fact that there are two issues here, two separate issues that the board needs to deal with. One of which is that you're asking for right now, which is approval to proceed forward with identifying a search firm to help the board, help the task force in its process. And then a separate one which also needs to be brought before the board, which is how that narrowing process is going to go, and which I don't get a sense has been discussed and settled.
So I guess I have a question. So if you send out, what you've developed with the rubric
Yep.
and the job description
Yep.
to the board, are we allowed to do that today?
Yeah. Well, no, we can.
We can communicate out the things we found.
Send out the new material.
We cannot discuss them except in an open meeting or in an executive session and possibly.
Or could we send it out and could we have a committee that people come to that?
The
to discuss
committee
it?
would be an open,
be an open
either an open
meeting,
meeting or an
Yeah,
executive
So we could have a
session.
committee that if they were,
I guess my question is there an urgency to make a decision in the next 2 weeks? One. And if there is, do the rest of the board members feel comfortable with making that decision and moving forward and having this firm act on something that we haven't seen? So that's my part two. So part
But
one.
That's, again, we're commingling the two issues, one of which is the board's approval for the expenditure and the selection, which is what is being asked for, and the second issue, which is the approval of a discussion, a larger discussion among the board members of what the process will be.
So is there an
I feel there's a sense of urgency to keep moving, and I think it's probably not unreasonable, in fact, they'd probably like it, if we said to the search committee, to the search consultant that we choose, here you go, we started with focus groups, and we'd like you to spend a week working with whatever our constituencies are to validate that these are the right stuff, that I got it right? And I think that would give them a chance to get in and to ask the questions that they want. But I think it starts with a decision to hire one of these firms. I feel, one man's opinion, I feel very confident that any one of these firms can do this. I do. But I think we could inject in that process the sense that they are capturing and validating this work before they go off and start to narrow down that field.
Can I ask, is it your concern, or is it the idea that if we hire the consultant, or we hire this outside firm, that then the process will be out of our hands, and then we've given them this this rubric and these criteria, and then they're sort of running with it, and then we sort of can't rein that in? Well, that would be part one, I just want to understand the urgency,
I feel that.
and I think that if you feel there's an urgency, and if your process is that, the four of you are going to have each, I don't know what it is, are the four of you going to have each of these firms come in and kind of present, and what their capabilities are, and you're basing it on the fit of the personality with being able to find the right person with them, their success rate? I'm sure, you guys are all smart men, and I'm sure you're going to be able to find the right person. I'm just trying to understand the process a little bit better. If you can elaborate on that, maybe I can, my comfort level more.
Sure. Good. I'm happy to keep speaking.
It's when you say that, just to clarify the question, when you say the process, are you describing the process of deciding which is on firms to hire, or the process that they will implement to assist us?
Which firm to hire?
Hire first.
So
Because you've already talked
Yeah.
to some of them, so
Yeah.
they're all the same.
well, we do need to actually give all the quotes to business manager, I believe, right, from Massachusetts state law. So that actually might also determine who we hire. We have to follow Mass state laws, yes.
Right, so we talked about sending out an RFP,
Yeah.
so that they all have the same information, the job description, and they return back a quote. And I understand that quote would go to, the quotes go to Nancy.
Yes.
Over there. And so that's the path that we discussed earlier on how we would implement this.
So I think think if I understood your question, it's like, what's going to decide one rather than the other two?
Well, I think there's a variety, I mean, I think price is a component. I think, what I look for, and professionally what I've been looking for, is I want to know who's in their pool. Right? So tell me about similar jobs that you've hired, and tell me what roles, jobs you have open right now, and who you're currently pulling. So the biggest mistake I think we can make is find someone who comes in at a great price and feels they know us, but they're starting from scratch. And what I like about the companies that I've talked to so far, especially like the one that you originally had asked about, in fact, they just filled Marlboro, is they have a list of candidates that they were very excited about, right? And so, now Marlboro is different from us, but they're local candidates and they're people outside, and so I look for that pipe. So I think it's probably goes to their process as well. I mean, that's a third one, but I think those are some of the things.
Right, so yeah, I think your question's a good one, and typically when you send out an RFP, you want to establish your requirements ahead of time relative to what's going to dictate who the final candidate's going to be. So you want to establish the selection criteria ahead of time, so that's probably something as a task force that we ought to do before the RFP goes out. Or certainly before we get any RFP, well, I'm just going to say before the RFP goes out.
Sounds like we might be in January anyways, but, I mean, I think that the whole idea was, I think it's important for us to elaborate a little bit on the process.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. And I also think, Melissa, I think
Of how
it's
they're
fair.
identifying the firm that they're going to go with.
And Melissa, I think it's fair, your point that, and I would encourage this, that, I believe it was a productive week last week, but I think it can only benefit if this were vetted further. And again, I think the greatest gift we could give whoever their permanent ED is a just process where someone can't come back at the end and say, we shortcutted this or that. But I assure everybody, I think we need to keep this moving. And I think we're okay. Like I said, people did not express shock and awe and concern and panic, but I think we got to go. And so I think this would be a good next step, be to start to move forward towards this, if people agree with that.
Nancy, is there some permit law considerations here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that, so how it works is you send out your RFP, the same description to each company
Sure.
that you use,
Yeah.
and then they each come back with a price. But you gotta go by the book. If they're all getting the same description, you gotta go with the one that gives you the lower price.
Well, I think you can
can't
ask
go by it.
for credentials and process. And if you feel that they do not have enough credential or enough process to meet your need, you can go with the high price. You absolutely can, because they've not demonstrated confidence in meeting your need. You can't just say,
As long as it's early on.
Nancy, we can choose whom we want to bid for this, correct? Right, we don't just put it out there and hope anybody will apply to do it, and then we say lowest price. If I've identified three of the, big I, right, all of us have decided that these 3 or 4 firms are the ones that are most capable, with proven track records, well-known in the industry. Can I put it out to those 4, and then, because then I feel a lot more comfortable with whoever that's.
Honestly, if you put a dollar limit, and I have to go back and look, if there's a limit where you gotta go out and post it, and then there's a limit where you can choose your, so I really want.
So I think that's a good question. I feel, I said to Melissa, I mean, I feel very confident in any, if we were to go with any one of these 3. I think they all bring different things, and I think these are all for discussions, but.
so let me ask you a question. Do we think as a board we need to reassemble and have a discussion about the rubric, the modified job description, and the interview questions? Or in order to move forward? Or can we send those out and ask for comments back or additions and then allow the committee to modify them, if they're permanent?
I guess that would be like my second question. If we're having them move forward with something that we haven't seen as a board, I'm not comfortable.
But all we're asking for is the okay then.
Those are two separate questions, right? So I think that we
think they're going to use the tools, if you will, as a second step in their process. The first step in their process is you need an ED for a charter school, right? So there's 150 names that are qualified in the state of Massachusetts to do that. They're going to start filtering those down by who are interested. And do they have the right qualifications, etc. They're going to get to a much smaller number. That's when our job description comes into play, when they can start evaluating the actual candidates themselves and having interviews and discussions after candidates have opted into the process.
And they will want to talk to state boards.
Yeah, no,
Within
I-
the school.
So in interest, to, again, trying to keep the two things separate, that would it work to address your concern, Melissa, if we can hire the people now and we cannot finalize those documents until we've all seen them? Which means they've got a pretty good idea, but they won't have their final marching orders until the board has seen it.
And my assumption is that they might want to do some additional work.
That's what I said. I think that they would welcome the opportunity to further vet this.
Talk to stakeholders.
Yeah, I would say I caution people that I think there's fatigue out there. So I think we got to be very realistic about if we were to solicit all hands to get in, start looking at the job description, stuff like that. I mean, we were able to get 30 wonderful, engaged parents, teachers, and administrators. But, we limped in with that 30, right? And that's because a lot of folks, the feedback I got, people are replying to a lot of surveys and things that are out there. So I think it's a just process. I think everybody wins. I absolutely encourage it, but I want to be, realistic about what we're going to get. And I think part of this is to make that happen, but put some time limits on it and keep going.
Well, we're about to go into a month where, 2 of the weeks of school isn't even in session, right?
Not a whole lot happening first, until the end of the year, and then first and second. This is what I'm going to propose, is that it's going to take a little bit of time for the school to help us to get an RFP on the street, and we're most likely required to do one of those. It's not a lot of work, but I do think we need to insert into the RFP criteria, requests for information so that we can evaluate these candidates and pick the one according to state procurement law that we think is best. I'm convinced absolutely that it doesn't have to be the low-cost provider, but I do think we need to ask them to expose in writing their process completely, as well as exactly like as you asked, Mike, current searches and very recent searches for similar positions. What did your candidate pool look like? The relevant details that you believe will credential them and allow us to stack order.
So we're going to set a time limit on that, and I agree with you, because Chapter 51B on procurement does not necessarily require the lowest cost in terms of sending it out to bid. But are we going to set a time limit now so that we have that process rolling, or are we going to wait till the next board meeting, which I think would be a
No, I
mistake?
think we can go out to RFP, and it'll take us a week or so to do that. Maybe more to get it, to write it up, make sure it's in compliance, and then get it onto the street. And in whatever form we need to, whether that's publicly or because we know that there are 4 in the state of Massachusetts that do this, we're going to send it all for.
And I think that was, so Nancy will help us if we can, I love the idea of being able to target some of these search companies that have already been proposed to us and vetted a little bit. So we would just put it out
Can I
there.
also propose that you get out all that information to the board, the rubric, job description?
I am ready to, I brought copies tonight for executive session too, so just not knowing what the process is going to be.
I would also recommend too, as a task force, that we take an action to establish the selection criteria prior to the RFP going out, so that when the responses come back, we already have our decision matrix around, especially now that I understand that it isn't going to be lowest price. In industry, typically many times you have what's called best value. And so in this case, if we establish what that criteria is, they may not all be evenly weighted. So we may want to look at what that criteria is, or decide on what the rating is, and then we don't get biased when the responses come back to low price. Like
So
we've already said.
you're talking about decision criteria for the selection of the search firm?
Yes.
The decision criteria for the...
That's right, correct. That's right.
I just looked it up really quick, just so you know. So if it's between 10,000 and 34,999, you can seek 3 quotes. If it's 35,000 or
what? The
Then you
formal
need to
funds.
do the official RFP, formal advertising.
So we're asking for
I-
a budget of
$34,999.
Yeah, I am confident,
$34,000.
I know that we can do this for under 35,000 with one or a couple of these that we've talked to.
Yeah, I was doing the math over here too.
You're asking for $34,999.
Asking for 34. And that's a discount, I mean, there's a recognition in speaking with them too, that our budgets may be different. I mean, it's, that's fairly standard in the industry as well. I feel confident we can do that.
So, let's try to move to close this topic. I think, so the ask is first for approval to publish an RFP and be authorized to spend the money. And then, I think once the RFP comes back,
Wait, I'm sorry, didn't you say
Yeah,
it's
that's what
under
you just said, it's under
34,000? No,
$34,000.
it's necessary. We just need
So
three
it
quotes.
just says 3 quotes. Yeah.
Right.
so 3 quotes, okay. But I think we need to still solicit them, right?
We've already solicited.
Yes, I've begun that process, just in trying to find out who's out there, but I think we could formalize it again
Okay.
in a consistent way.
Let's entertain a motion on the floor to authorize the expenditure of the funds against the existing budget. I think that's the first item. Would anybody motion that? Chris, you
I'll second.
and Allison. All in favor?
Could you state, can you please
So
state the motion?
I think the motion is the board authorizes the expenditure of up to $34,999 on retaining an executive search firm for the position of the ED. Is that what you motion, Chris?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Allison, the second. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So we need to make sure Tom is aware of that so that he can ruin his day tomorrow.
So we do not, like, we have the okay to get the quotes, but we do not have the okay.
I think that's,
Okay.
I think
So
we're
the
breaking.
next
Okay,
question
next-
is,
okay.
is the board ready to authorize the task force to select the search firm independently, or do they need to come back here?
That was one just moved.
No, we just approved the money.
Just
We allocated the money, basically. So I think it's a reasonable question, is the task force authorized to make the selection and award the contract?
I think so. I just want to understand. I mean, for me, I just want to understand the process and overall, I want to make sure that.
What if we did it with the, would it help if it was with the provision that the search firm would not begin to execute their process and narrowing process without some type of input gathering phase or something
I
like
think
that?
that if you can make it a provision that the search firm comes to the January meeting or the February, or whatever meeting to provide us an overview of the process, or we have a special meeting in January so that we can understand the process and maybe review some of the documents and comment back.
If we have a task force meeting and open, the board members can.
I worry that that's too late.
I was going to say, can we do it with the reservation that the board will see the rubric and the job description and those types of things before the search committee, before the search firm that we hire sees them, just so that, or is that not how it works? I haven't hired.
He said he actually has all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's done.
The
It's
issue
done,
is
ready
whether
for
or not,
review.
Mike, the issue is whether or not we agree that the task force has the ability to hire one of these search firms. Is that where we're at right now? So either we're going to give them the authority to do that, or we're saying that we want more information and we want to get that information in a time certain.
I think we can give them the authority to do that and then discuss the other separate. It's not really a vote.
Okay. So would anybody motion that the task force was authorized to select and contract with the search firm?
Could Melissa make that motion?
I can make that motion.
All right.
Can I have my first second?
I mean, you can't have your first second because that's an oxymoron. You can have your initial second.
Can I second that motion?
You may second.
Oh, that's my first
All in
one.
favor? Those opposed, the motion passes. So,
Sarah, you had a question?
You just raise your hand. Did you, was all in favor?
I think, I believe it was all, I was in favor.
Okay. Thank you.
majority.
So, Sarah, did you have any questions? I know you've been going fast.
No, I think that was my only question. I wasn't sure what your hand was doing.
So Melissa,
Does the board need to publicly discuss the description or any of that? Any of the documents? That's kind of.
I think we should in January.
I
Except
would,
that January is a planning meeting, and
Yeah.
we don't.
yeah, outside of the, I just, I'm trying to think about our cadence of board meetings, and I just think we're gonna wanna do that sooner rather than later. because
So
this-
I think that you've gathered feedback from a lot of different people,
Yep.
and you've synthesized it, and before many of those meetings went through, people realized what the outcomes were.
Yeah.
So to me, it feels like, why would we not send that out to Amsac and say, this is what we gathered? Or do we think that the board wants to sort of weigh in on what was collected?
Honestly, it's all in the spirit of transparency.
Yeah.
And open communication.
I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't
We
just
can
sit
put that
there.
up on the website.
The only thing that says is Dr. DeMello is a candidate, and if we put the interview guide out, the list of all the questions are, not just for Dr. DeMello, but for any
Interview
of our
guide should
candidates.
go out with the job description.
Yeah, I just want to make sure,
So
what we're talking
what
about,
deliverables we have is the job description?
we have a job description, we have, it wasn't directed necessarily to you, but it's to anybody when it's out there in the public. When they're smart, they would have, but I have an updated job description, which is, actually, I built two of them. One is the updated job description, the second one is annotated with notes about what drove those changes. And then I have an interview guide that doubles as a rubric. So it's built in the level of priority, so, guidance around priority decisions. So one section may be worth 25 points, another section may be worth 15, or something
So
like that.
I would suggest that the job description be broadcast in public, but I think that the interview questions and the interview rubric should be something that we should discuss in executive session after we have received feedback from the search firm that we select.
So another option would be to give a synthesis of the rubric that didn't get into the specifics of the weighting, but still sat there and said, here's a general description, here's a general decision approach. The job description doesn't give any sense of how you're going to make the decision, okay? And I agree with you that the interview guide, in terms of the weighting and stuff, would provide information that's inappropriate to put in a public forum.
Sure.
But there's probably a medium there in terms of some level of description of it. Now, there are a lot of steps can be taken here. One, you've already been, given the money. Two, task force has already been, given the permission to go out and do the contracting, which means that you've got to go out and you're going to have to approach the companies with some sort of, if it's not an RFP, some letter or something that's going to say, here's what we're looking for, and give us a quote based on that. And then you can make the selection. The only thing I think that the question that's come up is once and they can go out and they can start gathering the information and organizing the information. I think Melissa's only concern that I've heard, and frankly one that I share, which is, has the board made a decision on how, once that information is gathered, the whittling down is going to get done, and what insight the board has on that, and what insight the larger community will have on that in the interest of larger transparency. And that's something I think, certainly the January board meeting is the 22nd. Is that too late to have a discussion about that whittling down process?
When do people expect us to hire on an ED?
I think we want to be hiring end of January into February.
Okay, so we have to move on.
I do. I mean, I think, listen, I think there's a lot of good, very capable people out there. As you start to move into later February, you can, right? And so...
so that's your concern, is that we might end up losing...
It is. I'm concerned about that. But I feel like the permissions tonight, the permission to fund at this level, the permission to hire one of these firms, that the first thing they're gonna wanna do is to take whatever was built last week and make sure it's the right stuff. And so I think we're gonna hear from them very quickly how they wanna do that, and what do they need in order to make that happen. And what I would encourage is that we add that to this process, that the criteria in selecting them is how much you're gonna cost, what's your pipe look like, and something take us through what this narrowing process is, and how quickly can you get started to be able to fine tune this candidate pool. And I think they're gonna come back and say, we need 2 weeks to be able to, send Sarah Snow more flowers and say, please, let's, get some more people together and do that. And I think that's great.
So they're going to take what we've done and improve it in some way. And so us looking at it after they've done what they're going to do, we don't lose anything. There's no need for us to see it beforehand because they are going to make some changes.
If I make some changes, it's going to inform, right? They're going to understand there's something very special, unique about AMSA. They're going to feel that that's part of it.
And that's the point, I think, at which we know.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I just think they're going to want, I think we can see, we can say we got to get going. They understand what the time frames are, and I suspect they'll come back with a very specific timeline that says, okay, we've got 9 or 10 business days that we're going to want to really use to get some feedback.
I have to say I missed that because I thought last month when we talked about this, we thought that this would carry through to like March.
I think it can. I think it can. I think
I
it
didn't
can.
realize the time.
I think
we learned that.
I think it can. I do. Right. But I think that my feeling is that we want to get moving. And I think January
you
February
gotta
time
candidates
is
first, right? And so I think, Melissa, that the urgency is to capture candidates and get them in the process. Because if we don't find them until late February, they're already, the good ones are down the path of 2 other school districts, right? And they're late to our party.
We're not late yet. That's why I listened very carefully when I started talking to these folks. I didn't feel it. But I think that if we're waiting until January 22nd to have folks come, I think we got to get going.
So when would you foresee interviews in a real way starting to happen?
I'd like to see it in middle of January.
Okay.
12.
Yeah, I think they would say they can do it. We can select them, and give them these tools, and give them some freedom to go out and further vet this and talk to people. I think they already have a pipe. They do. They already have some good people that are out there, and so do we. And so I think we'll put that in. I think we'll be able to get going.
Any other discussion?
I could see, just as a comment, I could see, keep your calendars open in January. I could foresee the possibility of an executive session or open session in combination in the January timeframe once the decision is made on what search firm we're using. And I can't be more specific than that until we select the search firm.
I think you're right, especially if we need to do, the board is our hire, right? The board decides who to hire in this position. I think we need to be unified before we start meeting with candidates on the weighting and the rubrics. That's the most important thing. What do we think is most important? Is this a deal killer or not? And we're going to need to come back to executive session to talk about it.
And I think we need to understand how the narrowing gets done, because while it's our decision, part of the decision, somebody's making a decision on who's in and who's out. And I just want to make sure that the board is okay, the board as a collective is okay with the way that this firm does that.
Right. We need to understand the process that firm's going to use to do that narrowing.
And we need to also provide guidance to them in terms of what our
So it sounds like we're probably going to, and I do believe that much of this needs to be done in executive session, I believe. Because we don't want it public how we're doing the weights, because you want to try to gain every candidate to be listening into YouTube.
Right.
So it sounds like we're going to need executive session sometime after the 5th of January. Let's just count on that.
Shortly.
Shortly after. So is there anything else that we need to take action on tonight on this? All right. Thank you, Mike, for weathering your first board Spanish Inquisition.
That's
the history.
better you than me.
I think
And thank you all for your work.
Good work. Thank you very much. And the last item we have here, there is a update on the Culture and Management Practices Implementation Task Force.
Yes. So the task force, which was created, I think, 2 meetings ago, has met 2 times since then. And where we stand right now is we've divided all the tasks, recommendations, et cetera, into 3 categories: administrative, AV, that is shared by both the board and the administration, and board-only tasks. And so for the administration only, they've taken ownership of those, and actually they took ownership of them long ago, and actually have been working on it. Dr. Mello will be sharing a brief summary of what's been going on in that space. On the board side, we've taken ownership of ours. We've kind of prioritized what we believe the top ones to address initially are. We'll share those in a moment. And again, be brief during this session about that. And then for the AV items, they fall into 2 main categories. One, which need to be kind of delegated over to the negotiation task force, because they really fall under the category of collective bargaining. And then there's another set which in most cases are going to be driven by the administration, but need buy-in or support by the board. And we can talk a little bit about those. What I was hoping to share for today is, one, how we plan on communicating out progress in terms of the implementation task force, in terms of how we're getting through these items. And so what our intention is during board meetings, hopefully we can have a few minutes where the board can, board-owned issues can be shared, what our resolution is on those. Admin can share what their resolution is on various issues over the last month or so. And then we'll also share what we're doing in the AV space. And then what we'll also do is whatever we report out, we'll also post on the website. And so as we're continuing to go through issues, we'll be making progress, posting them up on the website. And then at some period, to be defined, maybe 3 months out, 4 months out, we'll kind of give a summary of where we've gotten to. And for items that we've decided not to address, at that point we'll share what we're not addressing and why we're not addressing them, or postponing for a prolonged period of time.
When will you have an update that will be ready for the community to say, here's the categories, here's